Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cardiff Central, the Cardiff Rugby Supporters Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Fletcher, and I'm joined this evening by Carwyn, as always. Carwyn, how are you?
Good, thanks, mate. Yeah, in the middle of house renting process, so enjoying that as much as anyone will and anyone can. But otherwise, not too bad yourself.
Yeah, not too bad. I've got one of those unlimited cards, for the cinema. I went to see The Exorcist because it's spooky season. I absolutely hate horror films. I don't know why I do it, but there's some kind of sick pleasure sitting there waiting for the jump that you know is going to happen eventually, and then it comes and you jump out your skin. I did that just because the new one's out. It looks awful, but I'm going to have to go probably on Friday. How are you?
Yeah.
Are you any good with horror films?
No, I'm absolutely terrible. I jumped at don't know if you remember, don't know if you've seen the Harry Potter films. You know, the like seventh
Yeah,
one, the snake comes out the old lady's
yeah.
head, jumped out my skin at that one. So there's
I've
not
seen them,
exactly
but
a high bar.
I wouldn't describe them as horror necessarily. But
I'm absolutely awful.
yeah,
I
well,
just
some people love them, and I'm in the category where I kind of like them. I think they've got good stories, but I kind of hate watching them. But I like how much I dislike them, if that makes sense. There's some weird
yeah.
draw about them.
I like
Yeah.
there were some ones that like Happy Death Day where there's like a cyclical where you're stuck in a loop,
Mm.
things like that. I quite like. Happy Death Day is not really a horror, but you know what I mean. That idea of a loop where you're stuck in that
Yeah,
and
yeah,
got to try and get out of it. That's a bit more interesting, I think. Get Out as well is a good film.
yeah. So it was a good one. Yeah,
Yeah, and going back in time, the others is one that I have seen and didn't mind too much, but yeah, there aren't many on the list of spooky films that I'm prepared to go and see. I'm not a big fan of clowns, so when It came out, it was like my worst nightmare.
oh yeah,
I
that's
just like I
horrible.
refuse.
Yeah, that's one of those. It's one of those. That's one of the horror films that kind of well, not everyone. Loads of people went to see just because it was so big. Like normally they're just kind of like there's always a scary film on at the cinema, but that one was the one that everyone went, oh yeah, I'm going to make a thing for that.
Yeah,
That character was awful. He was disgusting. But it's one of those things like you don't want to see it, but it's like you can't turn away. You need to know what's going on.
yeah. I
Um,
think that's the draw of horror, isn't it? It's that you need to know, whereas I just do not. It's the same. I have the same thing with cringe films.
yeah, yeah,
People really like that sort of Hugh Grant. He can't get his words out to ask her out thing. I just think I don't want to know. Just if
yeah,
it happens, I'll come back in 2 minutes when he's got through the cringe bit.
yeah.
I've got the same thing.
I've tried and failed on three different occasions to finish the In-Betweeners film. I just can't because I used to like the series, but I'm just sitting there and it's so awkward and so cringy. I just feel like I need to get out of the room. Like I need to leave the situation that they're in. I just, I can't watch that anymore.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah. I don't know
Uh,
how we're
so,
going to link this now to rugby,
oh,
but
I've got an idea.
I'm going to
Yeah,
enjoy it.
I got an idea. So, talking about things that we love to watch but also hate to watch, there's the rugby at the weekend. Ospreys versus Cardiff, the second preseason game, but the first away preseason friendly. Did you manage to watch it?
Yeah, I watched most of the second half. It was first half I missed because I was in studio busy working. But yeah, second half I watched the stream, and from what I saw, it was a bit of a game where no one really took the bull by the horns. No one took complete control of the game either side. But Ospreys, well, I was talking about it the other day, and Ospreys in some ways maybe were a bit fortunate to win, but at the same time, I don't think either team deserved to win as such. I think both teams a draw would have been a fair result if Arwell kicked that conversion
Mm.
from the touchline at the end. I thought Arwell did play well actually off the bench, but as I've started on him, I thought he did look lively and look as if he was going to create things, make things happen off from fly half. So that's definitely a positive, and I'm excited to see him this season. As I've said already two times on these pods. So yeah,
Yeah,
but in general, yeah, it's still difficult to tell, isn't it?
yeah. I think of the two, the second half was much worse generally. It did pick up, but I managed to watch all of it. So in the first half, we were really composed. I think you've watched the worst half of the two. If you'd watched the first half, you'd be a lot more positive, I think, because it's probably closer to our starting team that we spoke about last week.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, the forwards were more controlling. I don't think we finished a scrum without getting a penalty for it, which compared to the game against the Scarlets was, we said that was probably the weak point. And then the line out was working really well, and yeah, the set piece put us in a really good position. There was some really good attacking play in the first half. I don't think there was really anything you could really say was a massive fault. Tinus de Beer again was really good. I've spoken about him a lot already. He's good with ball in hand. He seems to really want to attack the line and kind of punch a hole through, and he's got a nice little offload, which against the Scarlets led to a try. It didn't on this occasion. And I did that thing where you message someone and say, "Oh, the defense is really good," and then they immediately score a try. But I think apart from that, like one or two missed tackles, and then that led to a try after that. The scramble defense was quite good. That was really pleasing to see. They made a lot of changes at halftime. I think that's why it kind of disrupted. And if that's when you start watching, you think, oh, well, it's gone to pot, really. I think it's a lesson for some of the youngsters in terms of the game management. And then they did build back up into it. I think the last 10 minutes we were kind of back sort of in charge-ish. So I think, as you say, overall, I think Ospreys would be happy with the win, but I'm not that disappointed with the loss. It could have, if he'd made that kick, it would have been a draw. Do you think anyone else stood out apart from Arwell that you saw in the second half?
Well, Theo stood out for his finish. Same as the Alatema Summerhill try. I thought that was really good. Those two started preseason pretty well. Theo's started on fire, which is absolutely brilliant to see, especially if I think it was 9 months out, something like that. So fair play to him for coming back. Apart from that, I'm struggling to think of any others that stood out. Like I said, I missed the first half, but to get scrum penalties continuously against Rhys Henry, who was tearing apart a Saracens front row towards the end of last year, is good going. So anything about Rhys Carey doing well in the scrum is positive for Cardiff, and that's something that needs to continue really into the season, because that's, well, I think we could all agree, being the weakest part of his game, apart from maybe more defence in the past 2-3 years. So if he's winning scrum penalties continuously, that's a positive going forward.
Yeah, I thought Alex Mann had a good game in the first half again. We sing his praises last week. He was with Botham and Ellis Jenkins. It's good to see Ellis Jenkins back, because obviously he was out for a long time. And to get parity with the Ospreys back row was really good. They've got a really strong back row. I think that's pretty much their starting back row. So, for someone as young as Alex to be sort of neck and neck with them, and not necessarily neck and neck, but not on the back foot, was really good to see. Then Mackenzie came on in the second half again, replacing both of them. He thought he had quite a good game. I think the difficulty in the second half was it wasn't so much necessarily all the youngsters as such. It was the defence went a bit south because they kind of falling off tackles a bit. So it was kind of a lesson in getting up to speed when you're coming off the bench, I guess, maybe a bit. And then the kick chasing wasn't very good. The tactical side of it, we were kicking far too long, and that just lent the Ospreys could get back into it, get a hold in the game, really.
I do agree. I think that gave plenty of time to the likes of Jack Walsh or Max Nagy at fullback, whoever was there. And Jack Walsh is a player who, you put him under pressure, you don't know what will happen. He can crumble and has crumbled in the past, so to give him so much time I thought was a bit of a mistake. But as you mentioned, the back row, I'm probably going to mention it at some point, but with the news that came out on the back of the Wales Georgia game with Faletau, be interesting to know what you think that back row should be going ahead to the start of the season.
Yeah, I think both of them played well at 8 when he was in the first half. You think realistically we probably weren't going to see Faletau before the Champions Cup anyway.
No.
So really, you're not going to, we'll come back onto it later, but losing Faletau is huge for everyone. In terms of the start of the season, or up till really Christmas, it's probably not going to affect us much. We're probably going to have an 8 to replace Faletau anyway. You also think for Wales, we'll come back on later, but there's not apart from probably Morgan Morris, you think who's the heir to the throne, because Faletau has been around for a long time, and he's such a world-class player that's probably one of the few recognised Welsh players at the moment that is recognised as world class. It's difficult to see where that it's going to be a big. He's got big shoes to fill. So I think probably Botham is the most likely. And then that frees up the debate of whether you start him or Thomas Young. And Ellis Jenkins back, that might throw into a bit of debate. And then there's who's number 6. I think they've been playing well with Turnbull or Timani at 6 for a bit, and then they swap him into the second row. Shane Lewis-Hughes had a really good game as well. I meant to say him. The scrum was really strong, so his question of last week was the scrum was shaky because he's playing out of position. I saw an interview with the head coach saying actually they've worked on that for that reason. It's not just versatility; it's more adding a string to his bow. You also think apart from him and Teddy Williams, or Rory Thornton made an appearance. I suppose it's difficult to know who the starting second row pairing is going to be.
Yeah, I suppose that second row pairing ideally on paper is either Turnbull, depending on what you do with him, or Seb and Timani, maybe.
Yeah. It seems you seem to have some who are second rows and then some who are number 6/second rows, whereas we don't seem to have many people who are out and out locks at the moment. I suppose it doesn't help that Cardiff have either trained or recruited an unbelievable amount of back rows. It seems that we've got a back row factory in full force. So I guess the taller of them are going to naturally migrate to the gap. But Shane Lewis-Hughes was a workhorse. So I think he was chasing down a kick at the 75th minute, and he'd started. And I thought Turnbull's work rate was huge, and he got plaudits after the match for his work rate. So I suppose number 8. I think Botham he's so versatile. He's so good. He's really reliable. And he scored a try, which was really, he shouldn't have scored. You think he had 2 or 3 tackles on him, did a lovely little sidestep, and then still managed to fight his way to the line. So I'd say probably him, and then Big Mac off the bench to get himself more experience and more game time for the last 20, maybe, depending on which other back rows/second rows you got on the bench, I guess.
Yeah, I personally think Alex Mann should start. I really like him.
As number 8?
6.
As 6, yeah.
Stick him at 6. Keep him at 6. I think he is a 6. I don't want to mess him around, especially at this stage. I think if you play him at 8 in halfway through the season, fair enough, but let him establish himself first. And I think he's born to play 6, and I really like him there. Spoke to Griff Rees, academy manager, before season a couple of weeks ago actually, and he said that is the player he's most excited for is Alex Mann, because he's served his apprenticeship. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but yeah, I'd say Alex Mann, and then you've got so many options as to who's your bench option, as you say, Mackenzie Martin, Ellis Jenkins. I think Thomas starts if fit, whenever he's fit. So and both of them as well, I think, should start whenever he's fit as well. So it's about getting whoever on the bench. The balance, yes, you've got 3 smaller guys, but you do have a guy in both of them who certainly carries his weight, and Man is a workhorse. And then the only issue being is, as you've mentioned the second row issue, is that both second rows, if you've got 2 6s/second rows in the second row, they are going to be slightly lightweight. And I think that is the problem that Cardiff have had and going to have. But if you stick Timani in there, at least you've got a big presence, and then Turnbull's experience should help. The only thing then is your line out. And but I haven't got answers basically for that.
To be fair, as I said, that starting pack on Friday's game was really good. The line out, obviously it's difficult without being able to see the replays, but I don't think we missed many lineouts. If we missed any, the scrum was solid. There's no noticeable. We weren't getting bullied. Normally, you go away to the Ospreys, and the front 5 are so aggressive and physical that you know it, and they're line out to the driving maul. That's one of their set pieces they're renowned for. I think that's what won them the game against Cardiff in the festive derby this year, just gone. And they didn't have that supremacy this time, so obviously they don't have their international pack, but then they're not going to have that till at least December anyway. So I think the way they've done it is, I think potentially it could work. I think we'll have to see how it fares in the actual league against specialists, but you never know, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Before we shift on from Cardiff, we've got to mention one thing, which is obviously Halaholo.
The big man.
Watch.
Yeah.
Willis watch. Willis watch. Sounds a bit too close to something else, but yeah, great to see him back in it. It's brilliant, but is it false hope for Cardiff fans? Is my only concern. What if he, if he starts performing well in pre-season, gets a contract, and then ends up going somewhere else?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, it's great that we could see him have another run out, and it's a shame it wasn't at home because Lilo got a massive cheer and he would have got a standing ovation. It's good that the club can give him that rehab time. I think the club were quite clear that it is for rehab, not for getting him ready for Benetton. But Matt Sherratt said they'd love to have him back if they can. They're hopeful that they can come to an agreement, but you hope that they wouldn't be making those sort of comments unless there was some hope. I mean, the fans are really hopeful, and yeah, as you said, it would be quite cruel to be saying some things if they're not genuinely making an attempt in the background, or if they're at the salary cap, then you'd rather know now.
I think one of the other things, and this is almost a positive through omission, is there's a lack of 12 signings. You look at that 12 position, apart from Ben Thomas, I'm struggling to think of many other names that fit in there. Harry Millard's played there, but he's not a 12 really. Same with Lilo. So Halaholo, there's a gap there for Halaholo to fill, if you understand what I mean. So yeah, evidence through omission is one thing. So I'm hoping he gets to go back because he wants to be there. Cardiff fans want him to be there. Lilo wants him to be there, obviously. Yeah. So yeah, so I'd really like to see him back in a Cardiff shirt. He's such a brilliant player when he's on it. Yeah, he sometimes have the odd bad game, same as any other player. But in terms of having that bit of X factor, he's probably, there aren't many Cardiff players like him. In short, you talk about your Thomas Youngs, your Matthew Morgans can do the X factor, and probably Halaholo's your other X factor player.
I think you're right. When he's firing, when he's on it, he is absolutely on it. And as you said, he's one of those players where you don't see at club level necessarily, where everyone leans forward. There's a buzz of excitement when he gets the ball, and and also I think, as we said, that necessarily this season isn't about performances. It's about making sure that all the off-field stuff is gone, and we see some positive signs around the culture of the club, and that it would be such a good feel-good story to start the season off. And it would in some ways taper off and take some of the sting out of the last season a little bit, because it'd be a happy ending for someone. And it's a shame we can't do the same for everyone. Our hip's still just been let go, even though he was injured, and it's a similar sort of situation there. So I think just if they announce the news this week or next week, and just seeing him run out at the Arms Park for their opening game, that would be such a mood booster for the fans. It'd almost be worth it just for that. And then if he does get his form back, and him and Lilo tearing up in the midfield, that's what dreams are made of, and that's why you sell tickets. Really, is seeing that kind of interaction with the crowds, I think.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm really excited about it.
But I don't want to get too excited because he might just be let go and they say, we can't afford him, or we've reached a salary cap, or like you said, he wants to play for us. We all want him to play for us. Cardiff want him to play for Cardiff and need more centres. So it's literally just putting pressure on the new owners to try and sign him if they can. It might not. If it's a salary cap, then there's nothing to do with it. But you'd hope they wouldn't be talking about before the game on Friday. They were talking about strength and depth at centre, having him on the bench. You wouldn't. I read that and thought, well, he's not going to be there much longer unless the rehab goes into the season, which I'd be surprised about.
Mm.
So talking about the season, how do you think we've done over the preseason? Do you reckon we're ready for Benetton in a week and a half? You're shaking your head.
I'm not shaking my head, and I'm not looking positive. I'm definitely more positive than I was 3 weeks ago. That's the first thing I should say, is because I thought 3 weeks ago, I looked at the squad, I saw how many players are left. I looked a bit concerned. I thought certain positions were lacking. But now I think things are looking positive. I like the look of Tabia and Adwell as a combination of tens. We talk about that in a national setup with the old bigger Anscombe conversation. But I think that's another one. We've got a good combination of tens, two that can play slightly differently, but are also exciting and want to run the game and want to play the Cardiff way, if we want to, talk about it like that. You then talk about back row combinations. We've got options to discuss, right? We're not talking, we're talking leaving Ellis Jenkins or a Mackenzie Martin out to the 23. And if you'd have told them 3 weeks ago, I would have thought, oh God, we're going to be having to get players in. What was it, 9 players in the first training session? So
yeah,
I think it's definitely a much more positive position. Benetton will obviously without a lot of players due to international commitments, whether that be Thomas Gaio at loose head, whether that be Barex at 30. I doubt the Italians are going to come back. Your Lamaros, your Barexes, I doubt they're going to play. So there's definitely an opportunity there to get a victory before the Italian players come back, because I would expect that Benetton team in week 2 and 3, you may see drip drabs of Italians coming through, and they may take some scalps as a result of that. So Cardiff may be, I don't want to say lucky, but may face a weaker Benetton team than we'll see in weeks 2 and 3 compared to, say, a Leinster or an Ospreys or Cardiff even, who haven't got the internationals back.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think in terms of being ready, I think there's still questions to be answered. I wouldn't expect all the answers to be there, considering the amount of people there has been in terms of coaches, players, etc., etc. But I'm actually quite hopeful of getting a result against Benetton, and I think if there's a result to get against Benetton, that is crucial, because that could really leapfrog the whole season, and that's a huge springboard for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think so. I'll just put us on the right foot. I think compare us to the other 3 Welsh regions. I'd say we've done a lot better than people were expecting. And I say that, I mean better than Cardiff fans are expecting. You think Scarlets have lost 2 on the bounce, and now they go away to South Africa. It's probably one of the hardest fixtures with 1 scrum half. Yeah. So that's if their morale's low and they get beat out there, that's gonna, as you say, we talk about springboarding the season. That's really gonna put a dampener on the start. And they started poorly last season, so that would have been probably one of their aims. Then you look at Ospreys and Dragons. I'll come back to Dragons. Ospreys have won 1, lost 1, and they're both quite close, so they're probably quite confident. They're away at Connaught, so that's quite a hard game. But then they don't have their internationals. Then they don't have as many internationals as Leinster. So us and the Dragons, I think, being at home is a massive boost for the start of the season. Dragons will be going to that game massively confident, having won both, and one narrow win and one, well clear win, I think. And we're similar, as you said. I think because we lost by the last conversion of the game, that could have gone over. We'd have been looking at 1 win and 1 draw. They'd have taken a massive boost out of that. But considering the off season we've had, where it's kind of been absolutely brutalized by a lot of the media, a lot of the social media. I don't think anyone would, if you asked me in April or May, I wouldn't be that optimistic at all. I'd be thinking, no, we've got no chance. It's going to be awful. Whereas now, I think we're looking at it like, actually, we've got a pretty good chance. And as long as they go out and perform or play well or, look like they want to be there, I think that's more than we hope for. I think what's good is that the coaches that I've seen interviews, they're talking about not necessarily this year, but next year or the season after. I've seen it before where you get hammered by someone and the head coach comes out and goes, well, it's a bit of a rebuilding season. But they haven't actually changed any players. It's the same players. They've just not playing well, and then the next season you don't play well, and that's a rebuilding season, and it's kind of using it as an excuse. Whereas now you actually feel because there's so many youngsters, it's kind of been forced that there is actually a rebuilding season.
Mm.
And because they're young, they can, as long as we can retain them, which I'll keep saying probably, but they could play well together. There's not many internationals for obvious reasons, but we need. You think of like Exeter in 2015 didn't have many internationals, and then that squad went on to win the double because they were playing for Exeter all the time. You know,
We're
they
getting
weren't being
carried
dragged
away
away.
again.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying in 5 years we're going to win the double, but do you know what I mean? And then the internationals should come in and complement the squad, not be the squad. The amount of times you're watching a team without your internationals, especially it feels in Welsh rugby, you think, oh, well, there's no point because we haven't got so and so, or we haven't got Fowler Tower, we haven't got whoever. Whereas having a young squad that want to play well and gel, you end up with a team that's going to be better than the sum of its parts, I think.
Yeah, completely agree. I think there are some very talented youngsters coming through. And I think we've seen some of that talent coming for a while. Even those performances against Harlequins and Toulouse a couple of years ago, when all the players were in South Africa, they were battling performances. Don't get me wrong, and we were on the wrong side of a hiding against Toulouse in some ways, but in other ways, we thought it was going to be a lot worse. And some of those players are now showing that potential. You've got your Cam Winnets, you've got your Theo Kabangos, you've got your Alex Manns who are coming through, and they are exciting players who are now, well, in Theo's case especially, established Cardiff players. We're talking about maybe Theo or maybe Alex Mann should start. We're talking Theo Kabango is starting. Cam Winnett is between him and Jacob Beetham to start. So that not even discussing it, it's an obvious thing. So I think that is exciting, and in terms of the future, that's going to be great. In terms of comparing us to the other regions, at this point of the season, Dragons look the strongest because they've had the best preseason and they'd be the happiest with their preseason. But I put us second comfortably, and then I think when you compare that game on the weekend against Ospreys, that was a game Ospreys couldn't afford to lose more than Cardiff. I think for Cardiff to lose that, okay, you never want to lose a rugby game, don't get me wrong, but having won one already, that was sort of put it in the bag, and anything else is a bonus. And to go out there, dominate the set piece, as you said, against an Ospreys side that, without your Nicky Smiths, no Tom Botha to pull out late on, and no Thomas Francis, who's now moved on, but still a strong front row with Rhys Henry and Garen Phillips. It's a good result.
Yeah,
that's a really positive thing for a Cardiff front row that has been maligned in the past. Okay, had its moments towards the turn of the year in the festive period last year, but apart from that, hasn't always seen the right side of the referees. So I really am hopeful, and rebuilding season and all that, but I really think the Cardiff fans, Cardiff players, Cardiff staff should be targeting that Benetton game as a winnable game that could you take 4 points or 5 points from that really sets you up for the season, because I really think that's a crucial result for us.
Yeah, I think it's doable as well. One thing I did want to say about Dadir, he's got a hell of a boot on him for place kicking. He had 2 conversions in each game, Friday and the one before. One was right in front of the post, so we'll ignore that. But the other 3 were really difficult, and he actually nailed them. So during the season, obviously we didn't go for any penalties in pre-season because we were trying to test out other stuff. But if he's got that,
the Dragons,
that's the dig. I think we could have won that Ospreys game if we'd been kicking points. I can't really remember what penalty positions we got, but do you know what I mean? During the season against Benetton, if we're getting penalties, you're just going to give the ball to him and he'd knock 3 points over. That's a massive thing in his arsenal that we've not really used or seen yet. And that's, hopefully we're not going to have too many games where we're well out of shots until the internationals come back, and then it might be a different question. But I think it's also important over the season. I think Ospreys were close to, or they could have got the Champions Cup place because they lost a lot more games than us across the season, or they didn't win as many as us, but I think they got more losing bonus points and more try bonus points. So over the season, that added up. In the end, they were still within a stone's throw of finishing it above us. Whereas, as you said, we have a boom and bust. And when we lose heavily, and we don't come away with anything. So I'd like to see if we are going to be losing. So say that game gets repeated in the league season, and we lose, we'd have come away with a try bonus point and a losing bonus point. So if you're going to lose, that's the kind of loss you want to come away with, I think.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's how Ospreys work, isn't it? They're always there or thereabouts, but don't always get over the line. Whereas Cardiff, as you say, is boom or bust.
Yeah. So moving on to Wales v Georgia, do a bit of a recap and then talk about the game coming up at the weekend, which I'm incredibly nervous for. How do you think Wales v Georgia went? Yeah, I assume everyone is, but what are your thoughts, Wales v Georgia?
If you'd have asked me, what time was kickoff? 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock?
Yeah, 2 o'clock.
If you'd have asked me at 4:45, I'd have said, good result, did well, brilliantly. If you'd have asked me at about 5:30, I'd have had a slightly different opinion. I don't think I'm overstating it by saying that Faletau not being there means that a semi-final win is even less likely. I was going to say impossible, but I'm going to say keep some hope and say even less likely. He's such a crucial player for Wales. He's such a crucial player for Cardiff, but he's such a crucial player for Wales and has been for the last decade or more. I was listening to comms and on Radio Cymru, and Nicky Robinson, 55 minutes, says, take him off. And it's like, yes.
Yeah.
That seems the obvious thing to me. I don't know why.
I actually said last week in the pod, I think I said I wouldn't play Faletau because he hadn't played in any of the warm-up games. Then he played all 80 minutes of all three. So that's a lot of rugby, and I know you need game time, but when he was on the team sheet, I was a bit surprised. I thought if he's not first, he's one of the first, and probably I'd say first on the team sheet for Wales. And as you said, he has been for a long time. So when we're not pretty much guaranteed a spot in the quarter-final. Oh, no, sorry, we were guaranteed a quarter-final, but not top. So when you think, well, we're in the quarter-final anyway, but I was like, he's on the team, so let's let him play. I thought he'd get taken off at half-time. And after half-time, I literally messaged my dad and said, probably really need to get Faletau off now because, we need him, really. And then, he went off injured like a minute later. I think, as you said, it's such a massive loss. Obviously going to probably use Wainwright, would you reckon?
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's a weird one because it's not even the loss at 8, because I think Wainwright's a very good 8. He's not world-class like Faletau is, but he's a very good 8. I think the gap is at 6. I think that's the huge gap. We could have got away with it if we were facing Japan, because I feel like then we could have played 2 7s and it wouldn't have really made that much of a difference with Labuschagne and Leach. Leach plays as a winger half the time anyway, and then Labuschagne is not the biggest lad, so you could play 2 7s and get away with it, and they'd play free-flowing rugby and we'd jackal over the ball and win turnovers. That'd be sorted. Against that back row of Argentina, to play 2 7s, I think, is a bit more of a risk. And sorry, the 2 7s, I should clarify, Reffel and Jack Morgan. Reffel, who's brilliant on the weekend. But that 6 position, Shunza hasn't, I don't think he's pulled up any trees since playing for Wales, really. His best performance was probably against Portugal, where he played second row. And then Dan Lydiate, well, if you're not going to play him against Georgia, when are you going to play him? Would be my.
I'm not
argument.
sure if it was legs, but I did see a post that he dashed home for.
He had because he had a kid. Sorry,
a child. So
sorry, yeah.
Apologies
anyway. Lydiate.
Like I said, I do like Lydiate. If he's, has he played at the World Cup yet?
Yeah,
in the warm-up games.
He played against Portugal, which frustrated me because that was a game which wasn't really to his skill set, really.
Yeah. So, there's a few questions about the setup and the balance, I think. But as you said, but there's always a risk with we only had one specialist 8. They said what Wainwright. I think Wainwright plays 6 at the Dragons, doesn't he?
He plays
Or
a bit of everything.
he's a
He's
bit of everything. Yeah,
definitely played 7 as well and 8. I think they seem to mix and match that every week. Ollie Griffiths plays 8 sometimes. Basham plays 8. Harrison Kelly has played 8 in the past. Obviously, Moriarty played 6 and 8. So he's got plenty of experience at 8. It's just, do you want your 6 playing 8 in a World Cup quarter final? Not really.
I said, in fairness, in the warm-ups and the games he has played, he's been really impressive, Wainwright.
Oh, yeah.
I was surprised he got picked because you look at back rows, I think you kind of lump all back rows together. And I was there with my Cardiff shirt on going, why isn't Thomas Young or both of them there? And they bring different things, but then I've not necessarily watched him that much of the Dragons. But I think it was Gatlin that pushed him to the 4 in the first place. And then he kind of went under the radar with Pivac a little bit. And Pivac famously said Jack Morgan was too small. So
less I'll say about that, the better, probably, I think, at this moment in time.
But yeah, he's obviously one of people tend to not have favourites, but I mean, you're either in favour or you're kind of not. And in fairness with Wainwright, he's played really well. He's really athletic. He's probably the most Faletau-like, would you say? Because Faletau is not. I think he's overlooked as an 8. We know he's world class, and a lot of people do kind of recognise that. He doesn't do that much that's really flashy, and he's not the biggest 8. So it's kind of hard to describe why he's so good. It's just, I think his work rate's huge. He's really nimble, really agile, and he just pops up all over the place. And there are times where you see him for Cardiff and you're on the back foot and you're retreating, and somehow Faletau just grab it and just completely, almost like grabs other people around him and turns the tide.
He's the best 8 I've ever seen off a retreating scrum, I think.
Yeah.
As in the modern era. I can't really speak about previous, obviously, but in the modern era, he's the best off a retreating scrum I've seen. And you could argue that's maybe because New Zealand weren't retreating very often in the scrum, but Faletau is world class, and it's his footwork is the thing that gets me. It's the little stutter step always tends to either hit a weak shoulder and then get over the gain line, or beat the first man. And it's so crucial to how Wales want to play. Wainwright is a very good player, plays slightly differently. He'll come on harder lines, I expect. It'll be more sort of coming out to win towards the ruck, trying to beat inside defenders and lazy defenders that way, and probably using a bit more of his speed because he's more of a probably more athletic than Faletau is by now. Yeah. I think, well, I sort of slated Lydiate there a bit, and apologies, I had completely forgotten that he's gone to have a kid, which is completely justifiable. If you're going to pick a 6, I think Lydiate is the man for this game. I know a lot of people are very pro Jack Morgan, Tommy Reffell, based on Reffell's performance, and I think Jack Morgan's undroppable, as we don't need to discuss. But Lydiate, if you want someone to just chop down trees, I don't know why I keep on talking about pulling up trees and just talking about trees. If you want someone to chop down trees, Lydiate's your man, and that's what I'm excited to see. I think he will be the selection. I'd be very surprised if Gatlin goes with a slightly more risky selection of Reffell and Morgan, because that is so un-Gatlin-esque to go risk.
Yeah,
he may go with that risk in a semi-final where we're going to be underdogs, but in this game where it's going to be like versus like, I'd be surprised if it's not Lydiate he calls on.
Yeah, I mean, apart from Faletau, we also potentially lost Anscombe. He's been jogging with the physios, so that's good news. He's not ruled out yet, but he might be. Now, I was surprised Bigger, obviously running out of options, Bigger went onto the bench, even though he was out of the game. With that, he's been reported as back, so he's at least he's back.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Costello on the bench?
I
mean, not that we have any choice because there's 3 fly halves and 1's out. But
well, apparently we do have choice, but I'll come to that in a sec. But yeah, the Costello thing, I felt sorry for him on the weekend because you called in 5 minutes before kickoff, and for the first 10 minutes he looked shaky. I'm not going to lie, he did look really shaky. After that, some brilliant touches. That pass to Liam Williams is really class. That is superb bit of skill, and that is what he can bring to the game. I don't want to say I'd be uncomfortable with him, because I would have said the same thing about Anscombe coming onto the pitch against Australia, and then Anscombe goes and kicks 23 points and equal. I think that was that's equaling Dan Biggar's record for most points in a World Cup game. So, in terms of what he can offer, the goal kicking is maybe the concern slightly. So I wouldn't be stunned to see Halfpenny on the bench as well. Wouldn't be stunned.
I was going to say that. Also, Liam Williams was crutching, seen walking around crutching. Everyone said that's a precaution.
Yeah.
I don't know that was a thing to just walk on crutches unless you need them, but yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about really. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Halfpenny at all if his kicking is like it can be. But I wouldn't have been surprised to see him in the later stages anyway, where the games are a bit more cagey and a bit more, people or teams try not to lose it rather than try and win it a little bit more. I think for us, certainly, they're going to be close games. We're going to try and slow it down, and it's going to be penalty based. And I don't, we're not going to be going out to play the Welsh way and throw wonder tries. I can't see us doing that. So, I mean, it's difficult because, Halfpenny's a great player. There's always questions about when is he back, because when he was on form, I think he's probably the best. I'm going to say the best fullback in the world. Yeah. Defensively, there's that period where it wasn't the last World Cup. It was the one before, because I watched him get stretchered off against Italy in that warm-up game.
2015, yeah.
Yeah, and at that point in time, if you got a penalty anywhere, even in your own 10-meter inside your own half, you just go and slot them. It was an absolute machine. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him start, because I think Liam Williams is class as well. So
just on Halfpenny, I think actually 2013 he should have won World Player of the Year. But that's by the by. I thought he was the best player in the world at that stage. But I think he came second to Kieran Reid, if I'm right, on the back of that Lions tour. But Halfpenny isn't the same player he used to be. I think we all know that. As an attacking threat, he's limited, and I don't mean that harshly. I think that's fair. I don't know how that isn't harshly, but I'm trying to soften it. I think it's a bit harsh on Rio Dyer to not have him in 23, but at the same time, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Halfpenny was it was like a change where I think it was after that injury. Before that, he could do everything. And after he came back as a brilliant defensive fullback, but he didn't have that same attacking threat that you used to see. Still a brilliant player. Yeah, that was it. Still a brilliant player, and yeah, you then get into the question of, well, who do you drop? And I think I've said before where I think Wales has got a really good starting 15, maybe not world class or up with the top sort of 3 or 4 teams based on the rankings, but a really good 15. I think that Wales has always played better than the sum of its parts, and we've always put out performances and beaten teams that we shouldn't be beating, because on paper you look at the two and go, well, I wouldn't pick any of those 15 over those 15. And then they put in a performance that people aren't expecting. But when you go into the bench and the deeper squad, I think that's where we kind of come up short a little bit, because it's not like for like. And you see that with Faletau. It's a perfect example of probably, I'd say him and Biggar, or Biggar or Anscombe. And that's why it was a worry they were both injured on Saturday. They're probably players that are vital.
Yeah, I think George North is up there as well, because of the slight lack of form of some of the centres around him, as in Johnny and Mason Grady. But the big thing you asked me earlier, sorry to rack, but to Costello, and this will lead quite nicely into Argentina predictions, is the thing that would concern me most about Costello is the kick battle, and not necessarily even his kicking. It would be defensively catching. And I'm not saying he's bad at the high ball, but Biggar is superb. But also so too is Juan Cruz Malia and Baffelli in that Argentinian back three. They are brilliant under the high ball, and they are going to come with that all day. And that's something which I wonder why Kieran Hardy's been brought in, because his kicking game, as we saw out in South Africa, was really good. And that was why he was selected ahead of Gareth Davies by Pivac back then. The other reason that Kieran Hardy's been brought in is the consideration of Thomas Williams as a second/third choice 10, which explains. I don't even know where to start on that. That really frustrates me.
I think that's whether it's because Costello was listed as the third emergency scrum half.
Oh yeah, wow.
And
yeah.
Thomas Williams is listed as potentially fourth emergency fly half. So that's why they brought Kieran Hardy in, because you can't have, if one of them goes injured, you then haven't got any backup for the other position, if you know what I mean. I'd be incredibly surprised to see Thomas Williams playing fly half at the World Cup, unless, if it happened in the match and you're running out of substitutions. But yeah, I don't know what it depends if Anscombe is going to be fit. If they're confident that Anscombe's going to recover by Saturday or potentially the semi-final, it makes sense. There's also saying that they want to reduce the training load on Gareth Davies and Thomas Williams, so they have been hammering it. And to be fair, I think most of the other countries have taken 3 scrum halves and all 4. Yeah, so I think that raised some questions from Gatland at the start of the World Cup. So it kind of makes sense that that's the first position they've called up.
Maybe. There's a cynic in me that thinks if you've got a Tame Plumtree who's playing well, you've got Matt Llewellyn in there who maybe can offer a bit more centre cover for players who aren't playing that well, which I think we can all agree Mason and Johnny haven't been. That might be a good option. The other thing for me actually is I was going to say it's a shame Lloyd Williams isn't around, because not to bring back echoes of 2015, but also think of that game against Connacht where he played 10. Do you remember when I can't remember who got injured at fly half? I want to say Priestland got injured at fly half, and it must have been someone else afterwards as well. But he stepped in at 10 with Thomas at 9. So and he had a really good game. I think he won man of the match. So
it can be done. I think it shows more more where the depth is in the wider Wales squad. And you mentioned about Mason Brady's not playing that well, and or hasn't been playing that well in the World Cup. To be fair, I was surprised he went. I thought Joe Roberts played really well in the warm-ups.
He took a knock, didn't he?
Oh, did he? I didn't realise that. And they say Mason Brady's got the versatility because he can play on wing. I think we're pretty well covered on wing. But Costello, again, as you said, I think he will be great. Or he already is great, but I think he will be really great. But these are all young players and they haven't got many caps. And the World Cup's not a place to be learning that. You think Grady's 21 and got 7 caps or something?
Yeah, the selection of Kieran does say something else to me, which is Gatland maybe doesn't trust the other fly halves, which is slightly concerning. I realise we're in a World Cup bubble and we need to focus on this World Cup, but looking beyond this World Cup, looking to that Six Nations, you're not going to have Bigger, you're probably not going to have Anscombe. I can't remember. Yeah, Anscombe's definitely not available, is he, because of Japan commitments. So you're then left with Costello plus possibly an Owen Williams plus a Johan Lloyd, Will Reed, Dan Edwards, take your pick, whichever one that is, or even Adwell Robson, the way he's started the season. So that is slightly concerning for me. But yeah, that is we have actually. I've realised I've sort of sidetracked this without talking about. It was a good win. We did well. We won the game. We got the 4 points. We got the 5 points that we only needed 1. Lucius Abbott scored a hat trick, played brilliantly. Tommy Rafael played brilliantly, but I suppose that sort of shows our mindsets, which were that game was a game to get through and get into that quarterfinal rather than a game that we needed any fireworks from, really.
Yeah, I think it's just that injury. Anscombe looked like he was going to be off for a long time. I think everyone watching that thought, "Oh my God, he's done something awful." Which, after the build-up he's had to get back fit, I think everyone was broken-hearted about that. Hopefully, it's not as bad as it looked, or he thought it looked, or felt, or whatever. So it's kind of hard to come away from that feeling really positive. I think we have to, because I don't feel like there's not really been mentioned that. Well, normally when we win really well, there's an excuse, like it's either the referee or it was raining or whatever the narrative is of the week. But I don't feel like Georgia played particularly badly.
No.
In the same way, I don't think Fiji played quite well. Like Fiji have kind of gone disjointed since they played us. They thought that they played their best against us. Australia were poor, but we were ruthless. And yeah, with Georgia, I don't feel that they played particularly badly. We got some lucky bounces and a bit of you make your own luck, but I wasn't expecting that margin at all. I was expecting kind of like a close fought 10 plus victory for us.
The only thing I'd say on Georgia is they just couldn't cope without a member of that pendulum, especially their best player. I think Niniashvili getting yellow carded. I know Basham went off for us, but it cost them a lot more.
Yeah,
I think that was the only thing I'd say. Otherwise, it was pretty professional performance, as coaches would like to say, really, and putting the opposition away.
Yeah. Same with Portugal. I think Portugal played really well against us. There's a lot of people saying we scraped through or we were rattled or whatever. I think the bonus point question may have been in question, but I don't think we were ever that close to losing that game. That being said, Georgia were 1 point behind us at one point. Even with all that, I never got the impression we were going to lose that game. And as soon as we got the fourth try, it didn't really matter anyway. But those injuries really taken the shine off it. And I think that kind of exposed what I'd kind of been thinking for a while, which is that if we have our best 15 out, as you said, you don't want to say the semi-finals impossible. Very unlikely. We've gone to very, 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 very unlikely. But then, fingers crossed. That's my motto.
I still think we will beat Argentina, mind you.
Yeah,
there we go.
I was going
There's
to
a
ask.
positive.
Yeah. So, what predictions for Argentina? Obviously, Wales win, but what comfortably, closely?
My one concern, I think we'll beat Argentina. My one concern is Argentina have got better from the start of the group stages. The upset argument is they couldn't get any worse. But they grew throughout it. They have got a solid team. They've got a solid front row with a good ball carrier. Two good ball carriers in Gaio and Montoya. You've got a second row partnership that when they keep their heads and try not to take anyone else's, they're quite solid. Yes, that was it. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Moving on, Matera's out. That's a huge loss for them. Nothing more to say on that. It's a huge loss. And we talk about Faletau being a loss for us. That's one of their has been in the past world-class players. Gonzalez is a very good 8. Kramer's a very good 7. Carreras seems to have sorted himself out a little bit at 10, because at the start of the tournament he was just a headless chicken, rabbit in the headlights, whatever metaphor you want to describe that, because he was terrible. The other Carreras on the wing is superb, real big threat. Bertrand at 9, we've seen what he can be like. He can be decent, he can be extremely poor, depending on the day. Dragons fan will know that better than anyone else. The centres are operational, and then you've got a very good back 3. So there are strengths to that side, and it's about exposing their weaknesses, and I think the weaknesses are the halfbacks, some of the discipline as well. I think you can take advantage of the discipline, and as far as taking advantage of poor discipline, Wales have been up there with the best sides in the tournament so far, and being clinical. And that's another thing Wales have been superb at so far in this tournament. We talk about Georgia. We were exceptionally clinical in that game. We were exceptionally clinical against Fiji. Okay, maybe we could have done with a couple more tries against Portugal and Australia, but we still got a bonus point in one of them and 3 tries in the other. So it's about, if Wales play how they have been through that tournament, they'll beat Argentina. That's my opinion.
So with what you just said, and ignore the rankings, do you think if Argentina turn up on Saturday like they played against Japan, which I think we can agree was the best, most people are in agreement generally that Pool D has had the lowest sort of quality rugby.
Mm.
But if Argentina turn up on Saturday against us like they did against Japan, ignoring the rankings, would you say they're the toughest opponents we've had so far?
No, I still think it's Fiji, to
Yeah,
be honest.
yeah.
I
I just
don't
said
know
the
if
same. I think if we play like we did against Fiji and even Australia, because Australia didn't turn up, but then we didn't let them turn up. Yeah, I can see us doing it. You don't say comfortably. I can see us. I could easily see us winning, but then I could easily see that Argentina turning up like a pack of wild animals and absolutely gunning for that game. And if I think what's nice is from a neutral point of view, Wales and Argentina both build into tournaments. Obviously,
mm,
we say that Wales progress as we go through tournaments, and Argentina have because they were woeful against England, and the game against Japan was a cracker. So it's
mm,
converging really nicely. And I don't think there aren't any, maybe England, Fiji. I think all of the quarterfinals could go either way if people bring their A game. I think if Fiji and England play their best, which England aren't playing their best at the moment, but the best that we've seen the last few months, that could go either way. And then the other two on the other side of the draw are box office. So
yeah, I got to be honest. The Fiji England game is going to be very interesting. I think that's one that's obviously, and I think it doesn't take a genius to work this out. It's about how England try and stop Fiji as opposed to how Fiji stop England. Because not just the result they had a month ago at Twickenham, but Fiji play in a way that England will try and restrict, and that's the English game. They're going to try and dominate up front. They're going to use George Ford, play, to be honest, similar to they did against Argentina with 14 men. And if they get away with that, it could be cracking. For the flip side of that, Fiji have got a couple of big decisions to make. You saw against, in terms of them getting worse. You said earlier they've got worse since they played Wales. I'm not 100% sure if that's completely accurate. I think it's more they've played a slightly different way depending on the opposition. Against Australia, they brought in, I can't remember his name, but the other scrum half to Lamani, who just kicked his kicks because they have an issue at 10 at the moment. And the loss of months before tournament was heartbreaking for Fiji because he's such a good goal kicker and such a reliable 10 and controller of the game. Against Portugal, they just tried to kick to the corner every time, didn't even bother taking points. They're going to have to do the opposite of that against England. They're going to have to keep the scoreboard ticking over. And then if they get a sprinkling of Stardust, brilliant try from Habosi, Naifalevu, take your pick with the brilliant backs, then that's
yeah,
brilliant.
I suppose I should clarify. When I say played their best, I suppose I'm talking the old-fashioned way of exciting rugby,
Yeah.
scoring tries. The classic Fiji that we know. They played much better, as in smarter rugby against Australia. They were kicking points, they were going for the touch when they needed to. It was a lot more tactical. I think I made a joke saying, "Oh, if Fiji have what the Fijian seven style rugby in their locker that we know, and are playing really intelligent, playing for territory and able to kick points over, they're going to be a massive threat." And it's kind of that. There's so many times against Portugal where they had, obviously, if you haven't got, they would have beaten us if they'd had a confident place kicker, I think, because they turned down loads of points. They turned down points against Portugal and then ended up obviously losing by a point. And they didn't need to win that game. They just needed a losing bonus point. So they were, it was a good 10, 15-minute period where they kept going for the corner, weren't getting anything. And, you turned down like 9, 12 points. Which ironically would have won them the game if all else being equal. So
The other problem Fiji are going to have in that game is set piece and not the scrum, the lineup, because that's not operated at all throughout this tournament. Matavesi is a brilliant player, and I'm not putting it all on the hooker. It's not. They've got two second rows who are utility forwards, and that's partly the issue. So, and if there's ever a side to lap that up, it's going to be England with Courtney Laws at the front of the line. You've got your Itoje, you've got your Chesham. That's a defensive line out dream, to be honest, and they're going to lap up anything that Fiji throw poorly in at them. I still think Fiji will win. I don't know if this is just blind hope, and that's not anti-English. I want to say that's pro Fiji because I'm so excited about this side. But They do have a question to who they pick at halfbacks. I think both halfbacks have a question mark over them for different reasons, whether you want a kicking scrum half or whether you want Teti Teller versus Batitu, who to me is a centre playing 10, just as obvious as Teti Teller is similar as well. But I still think Fiji will get the nod over England.
Yeah, I think it'll be close. I think they'll win as well. I think they will use Portugal as a bit of an eye opener. I think they're probably feeling lucky that they're in the quarterfinals, because whilst I really wanted Portugal to win, I also really wanted Fiji to get through to the quarterfinals. So it was kind of a great result from that point of view. But yeah, I think they will not be resting on their laurels. Whereas if they'd smashed Portugal, I think they would have potentially gone into the England game a bit, or potentially bit overconfident maybe, and I think that will have been removed. So hopefully turn up firing on all cylinders.
It's not like England aren't limping in there either as well. Should mention
Yeah.
that they were terrible against Samoa. So
yeah, and they with England, it's almost like because they're ranked higher and because it's England and they're traditionally very confident, and I feel like Fiji getting to the quarterfinals will give them a confidence boost no matter how they get there. Whereas England getting to a quarterfinal is almost expected, especially in the pool they're in.
Yeah.
And yeah, it doesn't look like England's a very happy, positive camp at the moment, generally, with some of the performances. And you kind of feel Fiji would be like, oh yeah, we're lucky to be here. Well, not lucky, we've earned it, but we're in the quarterfinals. Whereas England, I think, would be, oh, we're lucky to be here in the quarterfinals. Even though they've won 4 out of 4, and you said they've done the job. I don't think they've done it as, probably an easier pool than Pool C. I don't think they've done it as competently or convincingly as we have.
No, I think both sides have had a side that have underachieved, and I'm talking about Argentina in that first game and Australia. But I think both of the Pool C was Fiji were a lot more competitive than Samoa, who I was hoping after their performance pre World Cup against Ireland were going to be pushing those two sides. They ended up being fourth, I think. So that says a lot. I was just going to ask you briefly, who are your two other semi-finalists?
So I think it's really difficult, obviously. It could go either way. It's probably coin toss for most of them. I'd say France, I think, as host nations, I think they're going to have so much support. And they're a bit quiet against New Zealand, even though they won convincingly. I think that was very tactically. Losing Dupont, I think, was massive. So him coming back in, I think, is going to give them such a massive boost. And then on the other side, I'm going to shade it with the All Blacks, just because when they play well, they play really well. I know Ireland are really consistently good all the time. I think when the All Blacks fire, even though haven't fired much in the last year, they just go to a different level, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's that classic. It's almost like South Africa versus New Zealand always used to be. South Africa are strong and physical, and the All Blacks are quick and fast and skillful. And which is going to win out? It could go either way, but I just think the All Blacks. I think I've just got a feeling. Really, that's it. It's not based on anything. I just got a bit of feeling. I could easily see it going the other way in both matches, though.
Yeah, 4 years ago, obviously, Ireland had beaten New Zealand and then went into a quarterfinal and got hammered. I don't see it happening like that again. Ireland have got some big injuries. James Ryan is a big injury. See what happens with the wings, but the structure is so good. It's so good, and it's ridiculous that Gibson Park goes out on the wing as a scrum half and plays brilliant rugby, creates a couple of tries, and it's just like I can't see beyond them at the moment in that quarterfinal. I think New Zealand needs to create a bit of havoc, and I think they need to drop Beauden Barrett, and that would have been blasphemous for me to say in a couple of years ago, but I think Mackenzie is playing brilliant rugby and needs to play at some position. I think that position is full back, and then as the other quarterfinal, that one is a coin toss for me. And I think largely why that's a coin toss is how fit is Dupont. Like there's playing fit when you're in front of your home crowd in a home World Cup that you're unlikely to play in again, versus match fit. And I don't think he can be the latter. So
No, there must be some questions about how much he's obviously not trained since he's
no,
been off, and there's always questions of he in particular loves playing minutes. He just, as you said, we're questioning Gatland for having Faletau on, and they had a similar thing because it was against Romania. Was it Romania?
no,
No,
Namibia.
Namibia. He didn't really need to be in that game, but then you need to have game time, and it's a balance. But you can get injured against anyone, but um, losing him and Untermack, I think, would be quite a big blow. So, yeah, yeah, I think it's a coin toss. It depends if, as you said, if Dupont turns up and he's back to the best that we know he can be. I'd pick France. I think that's probably what we'll see, but could go either way.
I think if you go player for player, that's the closest game. If you say, do you take this player or this player and keep going for the whole 15? I think that's the closest one, and pick a selected 15, because I think you'd be biased if you got more than 8-7 one way, really. Not that I've done it doing it off the top of my head now. Whereas I think the other games it's a little bit more 10-5, that sort of situation currently on form. Yeah, I really don't know. I'm going to say South Africa just to be different to you for one thing, but also I have said since about a week before the tournament, that South Africa would win it, and I still think that, despite their loss to Ireland, despite France being at home, and they were my picks 3 weeks before the tournament. So anyway, but by next week I may be picking Ireland. Who knows?
Well, I've got Ireland in the office sweepstakes, so I'm still pretty happy either way. I just got a feeling. I don't know why. I've got a feeling it's going to be a New Zealand-France final, and I think before the tournament I would have said Ireland, South Africa. So I've completely gone the other way. I just
I'm
think
the opposite.
that beating the French, beating the All Blacks at home in a final, I think it's just for some reason I've got it as a fairy tale ending for them, and I think the stars are going to align, and that's just what I can see in my head. So
I had the complete flip of that, which was I had France New Zealand final, New Zealand beating France opening day, and then France winning the final. That was my initial prediction, and now I would say Ireland South Africa.
yeah, I would say it could go either way. I'm looking forward to it anyway. I think we all are.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. I'll give another shout out to the Super Brew predictor game. I did post a little tweet about it. It's really fun. It's really easy. They also do a fantasy league as well. If you pick yourself as Cardiff fan, you join in the same pot as everyone else. And yeah, we'll leave it there for this week. Hope everyone has a good weekend watching the rugby and whatever else you might be doing. Although it's probably going to be that if you're listening to this. And we'll be joined next week for another edition of this. We're talking about the Treviso game and hopefully talking about semi-final.